Hi, this is Bob Costas, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
The ML Sports Platter, all over the major platforms, Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. We are brought to you by the Allen Angus Pub, Ken's Auto Detailing, and Axe Exotic Pets. Get on over to Axe Exotic Pets if you're in and around Central New York. Route 11 in Cicero. They've got unbelievable snakes, lizards, birds, aquariums for all of your special pets as well. Axe Exotic Pets, terrific place to go get your exotic pet or go get all of the amenities for the one you currently have. Axe Exotic Pets. Go find them on Facebook and check out that page for incoming exotic pets they get in on a regular basis. Before I bring in my man John Garcia Jr., who is just, he's one of the best in the media industry, period, no matter what sport and what guys and gals cover. But he, so close to the recruiting side of things. He's the director of football for recruiting for Sports Illustrated, college football recruiting analyst, SI Now, SI All-American, Yellowhammer football as well. And he's on Twitter at John Garcia_Jr. I want to get into name, image, and likeness and how it impacts recruiting as far as where guys may go in college football. But before we get to all of that, I want to get into the golf year a little bit. I think it's been an unbelievable year. I really do. I think when you look at just straight up the major winners, right? Obviously, the big story, Phil Mickelson, right? Oldest guy to win a major in the history of the game by capturing the PGA Championship. You've had Jon Rahm win the U.S. Open, first Spaniard to do that. Certainly a global impact, not just in that country, but also European golf. I think it's a tremendous win. And, look, he commented in the postgame about it. He said, this is a huge win for me, for Spain. Seve Ballesteros tried to win it and couldn't. And look, there's a mutual respect. Americans competing across the pond in the Open Championship and other European tournaments, there's a major respect factor there, much like the Europeans coming over from, Ireland, Germany, Spain, etc., coming over, and even, the Far East, many places, and coming over and playing our championship of the U.S. Open, knowing that it's probably the greatest grind mentally in golf, right? The only thing that probably compares is the Ryder Cup. But this was a hell of a win for Rahm. He had fought the adversity of coming back, the Corona situation, the contact tracing at the Memorial, was leading the tournament, was pretty much in the bag, and has to leave. That was a big blow, and then obviously he couldn't prepare for the U.S. Open how he wanted to. But Torrey Pines is a special place. He's got a lot of memories there with his wife. He was on that 18th green, getting the trophy, seeing his wife, seeing his new child on Father's Day. It was a terrific moment for golf, and I think a terrific moment really for Spanish golf or European golf. He breaks through. Same deal with Hideki Matsuyama, winning the Masters, and that's going to basically make him a nice, cool $2-4 million in endorsements, if not more here in the short term, certainly a lot in the long term. But both Matsuyama and Rahm, guys who were knocking on that major door, I think, for quite a while, right? And now they've finally got them. So that was great to see. And again, Japanese golf. The young players who started playing the game, they look up to their countrymen. Now they're going to look up to them even more and say, I'm sticking with golf. I want to be Hideki Matsuyama. I want to be Jon Rahm and be by the time I get to wherever, the third or fourth Spanish champion, let's say, or maybe even the second, if no other Spaniard wins it after Rahm here in the not-too-distant future. If they're not into the game, maybe they get into the game. So it's layered. The impact is layered when a Jon Rahm wins or a Hideki Matsuyama wins in terms of the global impact. We've got, as you record this, we've got the Open Championship coming up at Royal St. George's, where Shane Lowry, is the defending champion. Just a lot of really, really good stuff after that. And, I've really gotten used to the PGA Championship in May. At first, I was like, man, kind of like it in August, this and that. But by the same token, now time has gone on, and I actually kind of like, one major per month, first 4 months, April Masters, May PGA, June U.S. Open, July Open Championship. Then we just move into some other stuff. We move into 3M Open. We move into the FedEx St. Jude WGC. We move into the Wyndham. We move into the BMW. We move into the Tour Championship in September. And this year, of course, it works out even better because we got to make up the Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits in Kohler, Wisconsin. So this is a big, big thing. It's a great, great, great year so far, I think, in golf. Phil Mickelson, winning the PGA Championship. I mean, that was an unbelievable moment for golf. And now Phil, I mean, when you look at, Phil Mickelson and his career, and where he stacks up, and I was talking with a good friend over the 4th of July about this. When you look at the most majors, you go Nicklaus 18, Woods, Woods 15, and you go down the list, right? You go down the list. And there aren't many people now who have the wins like Phil. I mean, it's man. I mean, he's right there, and I think overall, I think that I think Phil will go up a notch historically because he is the oldest to win a major. And by the way, if somebody else wins one who's older, Phil maybe gets even more credit because he was the first and he set the tone, set the pioneer. He set it up as a pioneer. And Phil Mickelson really, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, probably the greatest short game of all time. The careers are the career arc is spectacular. Doesn't have a U.S. Open to his resume, but has won everything else. Once he got the monkey off his back at the Masters, he took off. And look, there's only these golfers ahead of him. Harry Vardon was 7. These players have 7. Vardon, Jones, Sayers, and Snead, Palmer. Watson has 8. Player has 9. Hogan has 9. Hagen 11. 15 Tiger. Jack Nicklaus with 18. That's it. As the young millennial cool kid group would say on Twitter, that's it. That's the list. And so man alive, I'm telling you, it's been really great. It's been really great to see. And just the year, I think, overall in golf has been really awesome. I think, Mickelson, the global impact, Rahm, Matsuyama, etc. And we've seen other little things take place too here in, I guess what has been the lap over of, the Corona year and all that. We've seen, from last fall, we've seen Sergio Garcia. He won the Sanderson Farms. We've seen great outings from the likes of players like Martin Laird and Patrick Cantlay and Brian Gay and Robert Streb and some unknowns kind of coming in. We've seen some comeback wins by players. I mean, look at Daniel Berger winning the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. That was a hell of a win. Jordan Spieth, goes to his home state of Texas, wins the Valero. A lot of people were writing him off, which was ridiculous because Jordan Spieth is so young. And I think if he retired today with his multiple majors, he'd waltz into the Hall of Fame. Like, come on. Can't write off a guy like that. I just think that this year has been really good. We've seen a lot of cool things, a lot of highlights, even outside the majors. It's been really fun to watch. Harris English with a great performance at the Travelers. So, terrific golf year so far. Plenty more to come. Open Championship's going to be amazing as always. You wake up and just start watching golf. Justin Thomas defending his World Golf Championship FedEx will be good. Dustin Johnson defending the Tour. And hey, speaking of that John Rahm fellow, he is a defending BMW champ in late August as well. And that Northern Trust in New Jersey, Jersey City, Jersey, is one of the best tournaments out there. Dustin Johnson defending that. So we've got some Titanic players defending their tournaments here in the coming months with Rahm, Johnson, and Thomas, and then of course Shane Lowry at the Open Championship. Pretty cool year so far in golf. The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by our good friends at Bryant and Stratton College, Welch and Company Jewelers, and Sit means sit Syracuse. If you're in and around Central New York, the best dog training in town, any breed, any behavior, and any dog. Sit means sit Syracuse. You can find them on Facebook and on Instagram and visit their website, sitmeansit.com, and find your branch. Syracuse's best dog training. Get started with a free evaluation today. See the training, see the videos, the trainers' testimonials, and more at sitmeansit.com. Syracuse, New York, if you're in and around the area, go with them today. David and his staff do an unbelievable job. Let's bring him in. John Garcia Jr., Director of Football Recruiting for Sports Illustrated, a college football recruiting analyst, SI Now, SI All-American, Yellowhammer Football. On Twitter, at John Garcia_Jr., a must-follow and a good pal of mine. Garcia, how are you, bud?
Always good to be on with you, my friend. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good, thank you. Name, image, and likeness here, big deal. I think it's always been the way to go. It's just too hard to figure out, paying the rock star football player in the sport that moves the needle, right? And then, we got to pay the rower, and no disrespect to rowing or lacrosse or soccer or volleyball, but we know the sports that bring in the main money. This way, every single athlete, male and female, can kind of go out and do his or her own thing. What do you think early stages of name, image, and likeness here, John? And as a follow-up to that, how do you think it will impact where kids want to go in college football? Because you have the Power Fives and all the rest, but if there's a kid in Cleveland who thinks he has a better opportunity to go start at Miami of Ohio instead of riding the pine at a Power Five and make money doing it, it might change those people's minds, right? So give me your thoughts on those two things.
Yeah, well, first, Mike, I think NIL has been really positive right out of the gates. There's still a lot of unknown. We're 6 days into it, but you've seen a lot of great success, whether it's, in college football, whether it's Derek King. We've heard good things about Brock Vandergriff. So many different players who have been able to partner with a company or at least start something, create an opportunity, whether, even on their own, whether it's, we've seen Florida defensive lineman Gervon Dexter selling T-shirts, or Bo Nix, the quarterback from Auburn, paired with Milo's Sweet Tea, so regional, hyper-local. We've seen all sorts of partnerships, even with Instagram companies that just make edits. Like College Football Edits has several players linked up with NIL. So you've seen basically everybody taking advantage to some degree, and you've seen others play it a little bit more conservatively, thinking about the long play. Let's see how it shuffles out here at the beginning, and then I'll start to make my decision. So you're just forcing maturity. You're forcing a degree of financial literacy with young, soon-to-be young professionals. So that is always important just in general economically. But obviously empowering the players is something that is not going to slow down. Paying the players has long been inevitable. Now it's just a question of, where in the gray areas does this thing evolve into? Because it's coming, and then the greater picture, as you mentioned, where do the non-revenue sports, Olympic sports, start to play into this, whether it's revenue sharing, et cetera? Those are big fights yet to come all the way up on Capitol Hill. But at least at a minimum, if you have value and another person or company thinks you have value, regardless of sport, gender, level, all of that, now you can profit off of that. And I actually think that's a great thing, because now some of those more niche followings, take lacrosse in Syracuse, or take wrestling in Iowa, or hockey at North Dakota. Now those athletes in those markets can feel a little bit more valued, or a lot more valued relative to the perception of, hey, this is a football and men's basketball kind of deal. And then in terms of where it affects these decisions, my gosh, the possibilities are endless. I always say in recruiting, Mike, everybody has a sell, right? If you're Nick Saban, the sell is help us maintain what we're doing and become the next high draft pick, Heisman candidate, blah, blah, blah. If you're the worst team in the Power Five, if you're Kansas, your sell is, hey, help us get out of this basement. Help us climb. Help us be the start of the reversal of perception of this program. And then you've got your sells everywhere in between. Now with NIL, it intensifies a little bit more. If you're a bigger market team that doesn't necessarily have the strong perception, I'm thinking, UCLA, Miami of Florida, Rutgers. Think of big markets that are nearby. Now you can sell that a little bit more. And as you mentioned, your second, third tier FBS programs, Now it's part of your pitch when you are trying to pull a prospect from the Power Five to say, hey, come here, your light will shine a little bit brighter, a little bit sooner, and now you can capitalize on that monetarily that much quicker than you would at School X, at Ohio State, at Clemson, at Georgia. So I do think that this increases the reach of, quote unquote, everyone has a sale, everyone has a pitch, everyone has an angle that they can look to execute. So I do think this expands the field for those middle tier, second, third tier prospects, but I still believe those top tier guys are still going to go to the big schools. The Blue Bloods will still benefit the most because they have the most resources. They have the most flexibility. They have the most buy-in from the athletic department. So it will help the best get better, but I do think there's some movement beyond that for both player and program.
I think you're spot on. I see the words that come to mind for me, John, are just wide open. I mean, it's just wide open, unlimited opportunities. You have an unbelievable opportunity if you're at another school to just say, hey, I'm not in a position to go to NC State and wait till my senior year to be the starting wide receiver. Over here, I got an opportunity at Coastal Carolina, or, I can't get on the roster at Iowa as a starter till my senior year. I'm going to go to a MAC school. And all of a sudden, that decision it could make you $100,000, $200,000 while you're in school and you're playing football. That's pretty good.
100%. And the way it's already starting to filter down has been kind of remarkable. We've seen, I think, a Jacksonville State women's volleyball player signed with Barstool.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
It's just the reach is going to continue to push sort of outward, especially with social media. That we're seeing sponsored tweets,
there you go,
Instagram posts, things like that. So it could be when you're in college, man. $20-$30 for anything easy is a big deal. So
2 racks of beer, 2 racks of PBR, even.
Yeah, PBR, stand up. Yeah, exactly. So if a company, it doesn't have to be Mercedes-Benz or McDonald's. It can be your local corner store market that says, hey, $10 a tweet if you can tweet once a week about us. I mean, kids are going to take advantage at every level, and I think that's the best thing about it.
Yeah, no doubt. Elite 11, I know that was something that you were on pretty good about a week ago or so, right, John? So what is Elite 11, and get into the coverage here a little bit with the the rankings and the charting, and of course the most important position of all, the quarterback.
Yeah, so the Elite 11 is, I would say, widely considered the most prestigious quarterback event in college football recruiting. It's always right at the end of June into July, and it tries to, bring in the top quarterbacks at the high school level and pair them with college counselors who have sort of been there, done that. Sometimes NFL coaches, NFL counselors come back and give back as well. So it becomes this sort of this marathon week of what being a quarterback means. So, of course, there's a ton of on-field stuff, but then they do a lot of off-the-field stuff as well, whether it's board work, plays, interactive, VR stuff. They get back to the community. They do yoga. They hit the beach. It's kind of this quarterback, almost like a retreat. But you're under an intense microscope, maybe more intense than at your local high school. So 20 quarterbacks went out to LA to participate in that. And sort of the big names lived up to the hype. Cade Klubnik, the Clemson commitment out of Texas, was the MVP for the Elite 11. He was also our MVP at SI All-American. We ranked all 20 quarterbacks every single day out there. Quinn Ewers, the big arm right-hander, headed to Ohio State, held his own throughout the week. Nick Evers going to Florida was a pleasant surprise. He ends up in our top 5, same as Devin Brown, the Arizona quarterback headed to USC. So a lot of quarterbacks impressed. And then some who were a little bit more inconsistent still had their moments as well. Talking Miami quarterback commitment, Ja'Curry Brown, Rutgers commitment, Gavin Wimsett, prospects like that, Penn State's Drew Aller. So a little bit of everything throughout that week. But it really is sort of the quintessential offseason event, maybe nationally, but certainly for the quarterback positions, and the alumni who have won that event sort of speak for themselves. Spencer Rattler's a Heisman front runner. He was the Elite 11 MVP, I think, 3 years ago. Tua Tagovailoa won the MVP. Justin Fields won that MVP. The list sort of goes on and on. C.J. Stroud, who's about to be the guy at Ohio State, won it a few years ago. So it really does have some transitive powers towards college football, which is sort of unlike a lot of these other off-season events. So I think that's why people do put a lot of stock into the Elite 11, and it certainly didn't disappoint this year.
Everyone is trying to copy the newest and latest in sports. It's just how it works. It's a copycat thing, copycat league all over the place. And in the NFL, it's probably the big dog in that world, as you know, John. And so everyone's trying to find the next Patrick Mahomes. How many times does the name Patrick Mahomes come up at these things?
Every time a kid drops his arm angle and throws it a little bit sidearm, it could be 5 degrees, wow, and somebody will say, "Oh, Patrick Mahomes." So Quinn Ewers, the kid I mentioned, headed to Ohio State out of South Lake Carroll in the Dallas area. He does this on Friday nights. He does it in camps. He does it kind of just messing around, and people will start to liken the two, especially because they're both from the state of Texas. But good luck. It's actually not good for these young quarterbacks to try to emulate that. That's a special arm and a special athlete. We all know the pedigree his father, brought it to the major leagues, and Patrick Jr. had some of that as well, coming up in the high school ranks. So kind of leave that to those guys with special arms, the Matt Staffords, these two sports stars who are great pitchers and quarterbacks. Not a lot of those on planet Earth. So allow them to manipulate their arm angles. We shouldn't be, promoting 16-year-olds doing as much. But look, when you're a $500 million player and a Super Bowl MVP and kind of the young face of America's number one sport, it's going to happen. So there could be worse things, but I do think it does slow down the development of some of these quarterbacks trying to do a little bit too much. And unfortunately, many of the adults in the room don't help.
Couple more quick ones for John Garcia Jr. on Twitter, at John Garcia _Jr., the director of football recruiting, Sports Illustrated. Give him a follow on Twitter. Are we looking at more of the same here going in? I mean, we're going to play a football season. We're getting back to normal, home crowds, etc. It's going to be fun. We're going to watch on Saturdays. But at the end of the day, John, I mean, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, here we go again, right? And I'm sure the recruiting that you've seen that's happened from, the class of 2021 going into their freshman years here, it's more the same here, right? Nothing's changed. These guys are just top dogs, and everybody's chasing them.
Yeah, it's to the point, Mike, where those three programs you mentioned are sort of on their own plane. Georgia is kind of the little brother of that group. Right. Just they've done every single thing but get over that final national title hump, thanks to blown coverage in cover 2 there a couple years back.
But the recruiting at Georgia is so good. They just can't.
It's so good. Yeah. The talent, the whole thing is working there. And they really should be included in that group. But my point here is that all of those programs are replacing big-time quarterbacks, first-round type quarterbacks, right? Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, Justin Fields at Ohio State, Mac Jones at Alabama. They're all replacing quarterbacks. Georgia's just figuring theirs out now. It'll be JT Daniels, and it should have been last year. But everyone's sort of new at that quarterback position. What other sport do we award top rankings and just the perception that, hey, they're just going to figure it out like we do in college football, when all of these programs are replacing big-time quarterbacks, the most important position in sports, and we just say, you know what? Rinse and repeat. It's going to be Ohio State in the Big Ten. It's going to be Bama and Georgia in the SEC. Clemson will roll through the ACC, and it's all about whoever's going to find that next spot, whether it's Oklahoma, maybe USC, or Oregon in the Pac-12 gets over that hump and makes the playoff. But the chalk is still the same despite all that quarterback turnover. It's just remarkable. We don't see that really in any other sport where there's just such a, maybe women's basketball with UConn and Baylor and some of those where it's just like, okay, they're going to be up there. It's just remarkable to do it in a sport like football, the ultimate team sport, especially when you're transitioning at that all-important position.
How long does Nick Saban coach?
I think he signs through, 25 or 26? You talk to those around the Alabama program, and they say Nick is always in high gear. He's never taken that first step back that you saw with Bobby Bowden and some of these other coaches who are just getting up there in age. He's still in great shape. He's still an active recruiter. No head coach has recruited this well, this long, like Nick Saban has. So I think you'll start to see the signs from a recruiting perspective once the assistants start to take the bulk of the task. And once he takes a step back there, I think eventually it'll translate on the field. But you talk to recruits who were just there a couple of weeks ago. He's joking with them. He's on the boat, jet skiing and tubing with the kids. He's as active as he's ever been. He's cracking jokes on his current team. He's making fun of his players. He's just kind of living it up, chopping it up as he always has. So I don't know. I think this thing could go well into his 80s if he wants it to. And he's made it clear that he wants to retire, in Tuscaloosa. So, I hope it's not one of those where it's like Bobby Bowden and you're like, my goodness, this is getting kind of weird and things aren't great. I hope it doesn't get to that point just for history's sake. But there's really no signs of this guy slowing down, and that's becoming a storyline in and of itself and how remarkable it is.
It sure is. And, I mean, if he decides to go, that long, as you mentioned, I mean, we could be dealing with some ridiculous. I mean, the numbers now are ridiculous, right? Like the championships are absurd. I mean, he's got 7 national championships for crying out loud, 9 SEC titles, all the Coach of the Year awards, blah, blah, blah. And then you look at what he did, in the MAC, you look at the division championships in the SEC, that's now up to 13. But John, for goodness sakes, he's 69. If he coaches another 5, 6, 7 years, he might get to 10, 11 championships here. That's absurd. Now we're dealing with Saban, we're Wooden, Auerbach, Phil Jackson. We're dealing with those Joe McCarthy, Casey Stengel. We're dealing with those kind of guys,
Absolutely, Mike. And I think, look, it's just not out of the realm of possibility. And I think 10 is that number, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You think of when even a relentless competitor like that can sit back and kind of say, okay, like, the job is done. Maybe 10 is the number that will get him there. And look, right now, the pace Alabama's on, it's right. It's just under every other year where he's averaging a national title over the last decade plus. So if he continues on that pace, he's looking at, being about 75, 76 when he gets to number 10. So could that be what slows him down? I don't know. I mean, some of these older coaches, you just feel like they can coach forever. Pete Carroll's 69. Bill Belichick is 69, Saban as well. I mean, it's just like, when are these guys going to start?
Boeheim's still rolling, Boeheim's still going.
Look at Jimmy B, right? I mean, after Coach K took a step back, it made everyone, I'm sure, in your mind could ask that question, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm going to coach Buddy's kids. I'm going to coach Buddy's kids.
Yeah, I mean, he's still sharp. He'll still get on as a reporter. Flashback to my grad school days.
Yeah.
I mean, when those things start changing, I think you'll see a step back. But it's just remarkable the shape these guys keep themselves in mentally and physically to be able to do so. And look at those guys. All those we mentioned, none of them are overweight or appearing to be slowing down physically. Mentally, they'll still get on you. So if one of those two doesn't change, how can all of it change? So just remarkable stuff. And one of those where we're reminded, and 2020 was a great reminder, let's appreciate it while it's there, because like you said, this thing's heading for a trajectory that we've certainly never seen in college football, and he's getting to that point where we haven't seen it a ton in college athletics, which is just crazy to think about.
I mean, he's the greatest college football coach of all time for my money, and I would tell you that he has an opportunity to blow this thing out of the water. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. Final question. You and I are talking in a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years. What's the biggest change in football recruiting going to be at the D1 level?
It's NIL, no doubt. It's the opportunity to maximize your value. We're going to see prospects who are millionaires before draft day. And that's not something that we've ever seen before from a legal standpoint. Certainly, but just think of a Trevor Lawrence if he was a high school senior right now, a kid that everybody knew from his freshman year of high school was this guy going to the school, Clemson. Just imagine the marketing opportunities. Just imagine the hair product opportunities that this kid would have had. He might have had, a national Head and Shoulders campaign as an 18-year-old.
Garcia, what about Reggie Bush, Manziel, Tim Tebow, Cam Newton? Tebow would have been the tops, no question.
I think Tebow, exactly. I think in that range, the last 15, 20 years, Tim Tebow would have been that prospect. But in a short span, lightning in a bottle, my goodness, Johnny Football, Cam Newton, even RG3 in the Dallas Metro, just in a short sample, my goodness, what they could have accomplished. But, yeah, I think it's going to change recruiting forever because now instead of here's our draft picks, here's our championships, here's all this, the money's going to be public and available before the NFL. It's going to be like, hey, the last big time quarterback we signed from your state, made $700K before he ever stepped foot in the NFL. I mean, and that's going to sell. You're going to be able to change your family's fortune sooner. That possibility is going to change the game once all of this gray area stuff gets sorted out. Once both sides of the political spectrum sort out just exactly how revenue is going to start to be shared and how much more kids can take advantage with the video game coming back, all of those things, it'll be a lot clearer 2-3 years from now. So, yeah, I think the conversation will be just like it is in the NFL. It's going to be about money and where you can have the most value. That's interesting because even if it strikes in a year or two, whatever, you think it's just going to keep going 3, 4, 5 years, it's still the story. It's going to be the story, and you're probably right. You think about what would, the Fab Five, guys at UNLV, Charlie Ward. I mean, some of these big guys from like the 90s and the early 2000s even. I mean, NIL, if it was around then, how they could have benefited. Well, this has been great. John Garcia Jr., at John Garcia _Jr., the director of football recruiting for Sports Illustrated, SI Now, SI All-American, the Yellowhammer Football Group as well. Go get them all on Twitter. Make sure you follow. John, this was incredible. Thank you a million for coming on. Keep up the amazing work, and we'll talk down the line here, pal. Enjoy the season upcoming. Likewise, my friend. Always good to be on with you. The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by Welch & Company Jewelers. Go shop the showcase today. WelchJewelers.com. That's WelchJewelers.com. Daniel Luce and the gang doing an amazing job at Welch & Company Jewelers. Huge tip of the cap. Thank you as well to Stanley Law Offices, Axe Exotic Pets, and our great friends at CNY Electrical. If you're in and around Central New York, get on over to CNYElectrical.com. CNYElectrical.com. Man, they do such great work. Sean and his team all over the place. Commercial, residential, you name it. CNY Electrical on Facebook as well. Check out their services at CNYElectrical.com. I'm Mike Lindsley. Thanks for listening to the ML Sports Platter. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.